Welcome to Raw Machines, where we explore the world's most impressive industrial processes. Today we travel to Bergisches land, where massive oak trunks are sawn entirely by hand on traditional frames. No machines, no electricity, just gravity, steel, and raw human skill. It is a slow, grueling process, yet incredibly precise. Let's get started. On the edge of the dense forests of the Bergisches land, Curtin emerges like a fold in time. Here, modern machinery has not disappeared, but it has never gained total control. Amidst the distant sound of engines, one can still hear the rhythmic breath of axes, hand saws, and tools born before electricity, before alloy steel, and before speed. To move an oak log out of the forest, they use a grow, a horse-drawn carriage born for narrow forest trails and steep terrain.
Terug. Up fast, Joep. Ja. Get the los, man.
Dan een kettens voor me hier.
Ja. Beert half. Ja, Joep. Is goed. Ja, Joep, kom en Peer. Hoi. Joep.
As the horses pull, the front end of the log is lifted, while the rear end drags along the ground. This method of transport inadvertently creates a natural braking force. No brakes are needed, yet the weight of the massive timber remains perfectly under control.
Zo. Door. Schwing op.
Terug, Handy.
Moment, Joep.
Dan jetzt
Ja,
dran.
jetzt kommt.
Zo.
Goed. Ja.
Kijk even het werkje zusammen.
Ja, Joep, maar.
Regelingen erin. Kom Jan.
Hoi, hoi, Anti, kom. Hoi, 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 hoi. Hoi, hoi, prima. Hoi, hoi.
Our destination is the sawmill site on the steep forest slope. There, the ground is not leveled. Instead, it is left in its natural state to work in harmony with gravity. For them, the terrain is not an obstacle to be overcome, but a functional part of the labor system.
Goed. Jetzt omzet. Jetzt. Stop, terug. Zo. Langzaam.
The organizational principle is clear. What can be rolled should not be carried. What can be slid should not be lifted. The log is brought in from a higher elevation so that all subsequent movements are assisted by the downward slope. When setting it down, the priority is not speed, but the correct axis. The log must lie precisely on the center line of the sawmill. A small deviation now will translate into wasted labor later.
So. Jo. So, ab. Was seid ihr eine Ewigkeit mit dem Ding geblieben? Hat das nicht geklappt?
Schnaps.
Ja. Das ist eine gute Idee, Mann.
Röschen.
As the trunk is detached from the carriage, a shot of schnapps is passed around. It is not for celebration, but a reminder that the body, too, is a tool that requires maintenance.
Ah, schön. Das ist unser Abschlussprogramm, ne? Komm her. Nee, gut.
Ja, jetzt.
So ist alles halt. Immer langsam. Immer der Reihe noch. Komm hier näher. Nicht so schön hier noch. Los, Jungs. Frau weg. Ab. Noch ein Stück. Gut.
Now, the konthaken, a traditional cant hook, becomes the central tool. With it, a log weighing several tons can be rolled, steered, and halted exactly where desired.
Hühner Augen weg. Jetzt. Hopp. Weiter. Und jetzt Stopp. Moment.
Vorsicht.
Hier, dass wir hier so über den Stock kommen.
Nur mit
Moment.
der Ruhe.
So. Wie langsam wir sind.
So, jetzt ist weg.
The craftsmen do not lift the wood. They create leverage points, using the lever and the log's own weight to control its movement. In areas where low ground obstructs transport, they overcome the obstacle by laying down wooden beams to bridge the gaps.
Allein, ihr könnt doch wieder. Wir rücken hier etwas nach, damit wir nicht so dicht dran sind. So, besser, oder? Stopp! So ein bisschen. Einer. Gut. So.
Hoisting the log onto the support frame is the pivotal step. Instead of simply placing it down and wedging it, the craftsmen carve grooves that match the contour of the log. As a result, when the timber settles into place, it locks itself in, refusing to roll or rotate. This is pure geometric logic, ensuring an object stays still through the integrity of its own shape.
So, jetzt können wir doch Lager legen.
Komm weg. Ich kann.
Once firmly seated on the frame, the log is secured with iron dogs, clamps. All preliminary preparation serves a single purpose: to create a stable foundation for the precise axe strokes that will follow. There is no rushing here. Every minute spent positioning the log correctly saves hours of labor later. The craftsmen understand this well. With wood, there is no second chance to get it right.
Gut. 22. Gut. Etwas rein.
Gut.
So.
The first edge is marked. With a curved trunk, this is always the most difficult choice. It is impossible to save all the good wood. One can only minimize the loss. In times of scarcity, perfection is a luxury. the rough axe strokes begin to fall. The craftsman does not strike continuously. Instead, he creates vertical notches, or relief cuts, at regular intervals along the trunk. Each notch severs the tough wood fibers, preparing the excess material to be split off more easily. Large slabs of wood fall to the ground, heavy and silent. The surface of the log is still rough at this stage, covered in axe marks, but the form has emerged clearly, beginning to take on edges, faces, and direction. If rough hewing is a feat of strength, then fine hewing is where true skill reveals itself. The felchia, a broad axe with a wide, razor-sharp blade and an offset handle, is brought out. This design isn't meant for delivering more power, but to guide the blade parallel to the wood's surface, allowing the craftsman to work flush against the timber without their hands striking the log. The strokes begin incredibly close to the marked line. Each time the blade meets the wood, a millimeter-thin shaving curls away and falls. A master craftsman can create a surface so flat, it looks as if it has just been planed. Once the first two flat surfaces are finished, they serve as the reference points for all remaining work. From here, the chalk line will be snapped, and every saw cut must strictly follow the marks laid down. The log is rolled over on the support frame. The craftsman needs to visualize the entire form before committing to any cuts. Without this step, snapping the chalk line would be nothing more than guesswork. The line is blackened and stretched tight from one end of the log to the other. With a single snap, a straight line appears, decisive and without hesitation. In the past, the pigment was mixed from soot and linseed oil. Today, craftsmen use ready-made oil paint, but the principle remains unchanged.
Zo. Hier de Mitte. Goed. Zo. Und hier. Gut. So. So, jetzt.
Schnur auf dem Strich in der Mitte.
Mittelstrich.
Mittelstrich da auf.
Jawohl.
Klar, anziehen.
Jawohl.
Klar?
Jo. Genau senkrecht.
From the heart of the log, the cuts are carefully determined. The end points are plumbed down to the bottom edge using a plumb bob, then joined across the cross-section. Afterward, the log is flipped once more to snap the chalk lines on the opposite side. Every flip is a verification, ensuring that the cut lines will meet exactly where planned. Once this stage is complete, the entire geometry of the sawing process is locked. The saw blade, no matter how long or sharp, is permitted only to follow these precise lines.
So, jetzt Kant hoch.
Oh! Ab!
Und weiter. Und ab. Ab. Los. So.
Oh, de kappen kunt.
The workman's day begins at the first light of dawn and stretches until dusk. They survive on a single hot meal a day. The rest is just bread, lard, and water to keep their strength up.
So.
Da steht ja noch ein Ei zum Schluss.
Das wird Anfang.
Ja,
Ja, ich hab das. Oh, so langsam.
The saw frame is erected at the lower edge of the yard, making the most of the natural slope. Its central structure is a massive timber pillar, buried deep in the earth and braced by two side struts to prevent any swaying during continuous sawing. Above, wooden beams are clamped tight to support a long, diagonal guide rail, flattened on two sides. This acts as a track for the log, ensuring it stays at the correct height and never rolls while being cut.
In der Mitte.
So.
Hier ein, zwei und da zwei. Komm ein bisschen nach hier.
So,
So, jetzt aber gleichmäßig. Zu, back,
Ja.
hau. Und weg.
Mitte.
Vorsicht. Vorsicht. So, hau. Jetzt.
To saw the timber, the hewn oak logs must be hoisted onto the frame. This task requires the participation of the entire crew. Using rhythmic rocking motions, the log is pushed bit by bit up the long, sloped beams of the saw frame.
Bis zur Mitte. Jetzt. Hau. Jetzt.
Jawohl.
Ja, etwas mehr. Und nochmal.
Vorsicht.
So, nun stopp. So, das sollen wir schieben.
Schienenwechsel.
So, gemeinsam ran. Jetzt.
Oh!
Ho!
Oh!
Jetzt. Vorsicht. Nur mit der Ruhe. Und ein bisschen schieben.
Wollen wir nichts, wollen wir nichts machen. Wollen wir nichts etwas anheben. Nicht da dran geben.
Langsam.
Und.
Jetzt.
Nur noch Finger. Ja. Drin. Ja.
Und jetzt schieben. So, gerade, die Stange gerade.
As the log reaches its peak, its center of gravity is shifted. The rear end is lifted while the front end is rolled forward using a crowbar placed underneath. This movement demands absolute precision. A break in rhythm could cause the massive timber to rotate unexpectedly.
Anheben.
Anheben.
Immer ziehen. Goed.
Linker Sik aankielen.
Goed.
Immer noch mee.
Goed.
Nou ja, nou, immer noch. Langsam, langsam weer, nog leicht, zachter, zachter op. Nou.
The log is considered properly positioned when it overhangs more than half the length of the saw frame. At this point, the rear section is chained down to prevent tipping. Padding blocks are placed underneath to distribute the load, reducing concentrated pressure on any single point of the frame. Wooden wedges are driven into every contact point, adjusted bit by bit until the log lies perfectly horizontal. Once everything is ready, the sawing process truly begins. The man standing on the saw frame is known as the Obermann, while the man below is the Untermann. Though their positions differ in height, their roles are equal. Neither leads alone. The rhythm only exists when both understand each other's movements. The first cut is always executed with extreme caution. The saw blade must be guided precisely into the snapped chalk line. Only when the blade has established a stable kerf does the sawing rhythm begin to steady and accelerate. The rule of operation is very clear. The saw only cuts on the downstroke. On the upstroke, the blade is simply returned to its starting position, with almost no cutting force applied. This technique conserves energy and allows the laborers to maintain their pace over long periods. Sawing through an oak trunk between 70 and 80 centimeters thick could take 3 to 4 weeks of continuous labor. To prepare the 20-30 cubic meters of timber required for a 2-story framed house, a crew might have to work for 3 full months. Wages clearly reflected both the value and the limitations of this method. Around 1910, a day's labor was paid 1 taler. By 1934, 2 well-coordinated sawyers could earn about 70 pfennigs per hour. It was not a high wage, but it was enough to sustain the craft, provided their health held up. Occupational risks were ever present. The sawyer standing on the frame had to balance on a surface only 26 centimeters wide. There were no railings and no safety harnesses. This work demanded enduring physical strength, a keen sense of balance, and, above all, no fear of heights.
Zo.
Keil.
Zo. Brechstang weg.
Stang weg.
Viewed from today's perspective, these production figures might seem startlingly slow. But for the craftsmen of old, this was the natural rhythm of labor, a world where economic value was inseparable from the value of manual skill and human effort.
Spannen. Geil runter, geil. So, ist fest weg.
Ja, dann
Klammer weg. So, noch ein bisschen rein. Ja, vollkommen. So, hold it there, ja.
After days of labor, the saw blade is no longer as sharp as it once was. The pull grows heavier, sawdust clings more stubbornly, and human energy is consumed faster. This is the signal that it is time for the blade to be maintained.
Reicht. So, man hat so schön fest. Ja. So.
Sharpening is performed using a wide-surfaced saw file. The craftsman files both the leading and trailing edges of each tooth, ensuring the cutting edges are sharp, uniform, and clean. Once sharpened, the saw teeth are set, bent alternately to the left and right. Each side is offset by only a few millimeters, just enough to create a kerf, wider than the thickness of the blade itself. This prevents the blade from binding in the wood and reduces friction to a minimum.
So, müssen wir umsetzen.
Ja.
Moment.
Geiler los. So, jetzt anheben.
Ja,
Und besser
Moment.
durchschieben. So. Jawohl.
Moment.
So.
So.
So reicht.
Kann er jetzt. Ja, so jetzt. So jetzt.
The maintenance is always carried out in a specific sequence. In one pass, only every other tooth on one side is filed. Then, the blade is flipped to file the remaining teeth from the opposite side. If the set of the teeth still meets requirements, the craftsman will not bend them further to avoid weakening the steel.
So. Das
So.
reicht.
So, das reicht.
Moment. Das kommt. So.
So, das reicht.
Wenn in So.
Ist weit.
This maintenance phase produces no timber, but it directly dictates the labor efficiency of the following days. A correctly sharpened saw can significantly reduce the required pulling force, allowing the two sawyers to work longer without exhaustion. For them, caring for the saw is as vital as caring for their own bodies.
So, jetzt umsetzen. So, jetzt weiter.
Hier unten, lass mal.
Ja.
Noch ein bisschen durch. So, komm her. So, Moment. So,
Keiner raus. Noch rumdrehen. So.
so nehmen wir den wieder an. Ja.
With the saw blade resharpened, keen, and balanced, the work returns to its familiar rhythm.
Ganz gerade. Gerade ran an den Baum. An den Baum.
The remaining half of the oak log is sawn precisely along the chalk lines snapped earlier. The Untermann uses his entire body weight to drive the downward pull. The Obermann lifts the handle high above his head, preparing for the next stroke. Each man knows his role so intimately that no signals or reminders are necessary. As the second half of the log gradually splits away, the timber is no longer a resisting mass. It begins to surrender to the steady, rhythmic labor of the men. There is no grand climax, only the quiet, persistent progression of the saw until the trunk is completely opened, following the path laid out long ago. When the final planks are separated from the trunk, the most physically grueling part of the work is over. But for the master carpenter, this is when the true architectural planning begins. Based on the intended use, he compiles a list of necessary components: posts, frames, beams, purlins, and floorboards. From there, the sawing is organized so that each log is utilized to its maximum potential. Once sawn, the wood is not stacked haphazardly. The planks are cleared and restacked close to their original positions, with small wooden stickers placed between the layers. The drying time depends on economic circumstances and immediate needs. Those who have the means typically let the wood air dry for 2 to 3 years before using it for construction. This significantly enhances both the durability and the final quality of the timber. The final cut is never executed in a rush. As the two halves of the log nearly separate, the craftsman intentionally stops, leaving a few centimeters of wood in the middle. This small bridge of timber keeps the parts connected, preventing them from falling or rotating unexpectedly when the final tension is released.
Nein, ik heb het was goed zien. Het was goed zien. Zo, yes. Oh, zo is goed.
Zo, nu de keiler raus.
Jetzt kommt de keiler raus.
Moment, is nog niet weg. Zo, zo. Ja. Zo, ketten zusammen. Ketten. Enge.
Ah, dat is zo. Oh.
Moment. Zo, aan de twee keiler hinter. Nee. Immer noch.
Hey, jetzt bin ich.
The exposed end is tightly chained and secured with large wedges for stability. Only when everything is safe does the saw blade continue its descent until the cut is fully closed.
Wie weit bist du? Ganz so. Was? Ja, wie weit hast du läufst du noch?
Da ist
3 Kühe, 4. Langsam. So. Hopp, Griff dran.
On the underside of the planks, a small angled piece of uncut wood always remains. This exists because the saw frame prevents the blade from traveling all the way through. The craftsmen call this the soul of the wood, seal. It is not a flaw, but an indelible fingerprint of the manual method.
Keiler drin. So, und weiter geht's.
Before lowering the timber from the frame, more large wedges are driven between the chains and the wood to hold the planks firmly, preventing them from collapsing when the final connection is broken. Once the trunk is completely separated, the heavy planks slide down. If the sole is still attached, the craftsman uses a crowbar to gently pry that final piece of wood apart. There is no need for haste. The timber has endured enough pressure over the weeks. Now, it is permitted to come away slowly.
Und das Ding vom Bock weg.
Jetzt her.
So. Und runter.
So, dann hou je dit fest.
So, halt ihn fest unten.
Ja. So, jetzt festhalten. So, jetzt fest.
So, nu de Kette raus.
At that moment, the sawing is over. There are no shouts of joy. There is only the silence of the forest and the planks lying still, carrying with them the form of the wood, the marks of the tools, and the soul of a method that has endured for generations.
Wunderbar.
Ja. Ja, das kann ja nicht auseinander.
Nein, dat kan ik niet.
Alles nicht drin.
Ketten lösen. Alles weg. So, jetzt klappen wir auseinander. So. Die nächste bitte.
Feste, jetzt feste. Dann ein Pauli ist er. Oh, nochmal.
In the old houses of the Bergische land, those in the know need only look at the surface of the wood to recognize it immediately. Narrow, parallel saw marks, not perfectly uniform, shimmering with a silver-gray patina over time. These are the unmistakable signs of timber, hand-sawn on a frame.
Next. Next.
Manual methods may no longer be the economic choice in the modern world, but their value has never truly vanished. For in every hand-sawn grain, there is not just labor, but memory, knowledge, and the way humans once understood the material world around them. This journey is not meant to prove that the old ways are better than the new. Modern machinery exists because it is necessary, helping humanity build faster, more abundantly, and with greater precision. But what hand sawing reminds us is that there was once a different way to engage with the material world. In that way of working, humans did not stand outside as observers of a process. They were inside it. Gravity was not fought, but utilized. Material was not forced, but read and understood. Every step demanded the full presence of both body and mind. Hand-sawn planks are not perfect by industrial standards. Yet, it is that very lack of uniformity that contains information about the terrain, the freezing winter, and the shared breath of two craftsmen facing each other across a saw blade. This is data that no machine can ever record. It is a way to keep professional memory from vanishing completely from today's high-speed world. For once those skills are lost, it is not just the tools that disappear. It is an entire understanding of labor, of value, and of the relationship between humans and their materials. Ultimately, the story of the Diel saw is not just a story about wood. It is a story of how humans once crafted their world, slowly, laboriously, but with intent. In that world, every saw stroke did not just create a material, it left behind the mark of the person who made it. What was once made by hand should not only be remembered in books, it needs to be seen, heard, and understood, to remind us that before there were machines, there was skill, and before there was speed, there was endurance.
Ganz gut. Gut.